Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the commemoration of 9/11, the 22nd anniversary of that tragic day. My name is William Heck, and I am the MC of tonight's program. Let's welcome the Honor Guard from the Newton Police and Fire and the Middlesex County Sheriff's Department to post the colors. Virginia Gardner, Chaplain, the American Legion Auxiliary Post 440, gives the invocation.
Good evening. Our founder, Sandy Young, is unable to be with us this evening due to the sudden death of her mother. Come unto us. Come unto our presence this evening, O God, as we give thanks for the lives of our loved ones who are now in your loving care. We give you thanks for each of our loved ones we remember here today, for all the ways in which they touched our life, for the ways in which their lives and their love continue to be with us. In our hours of sadness, in our hearts, we will remember them always. Come to us with peace. Come into our presence this night, O God, as we place our memories before you, knowing that we will be reunited with them one day in your heavenly home. Come to us with hope.
We will now ask Liz Feinstein to sing the national anthem.
Honor guard, present arms!
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet
Lucas Johnson will now lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The color guard will now retire the colors.
Honor guard, right, face. Forward, march. Head, 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 right. Head, 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 right. Head, 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 right, left. Right, left. Right, left. Head, 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 right. Right, left. Right, left. Head, 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 right. Right, right.
Please be seated. September 11, 2001 began as a most beautiful summer day in Newton. By 10:28 on that morning, 4 planes were crashed. The Twin Towers had collapsed. The Pentagon was assaulted, and 265 people on planes and nearly 3,000 people on the ground were murdered by Al-Qaeda terrorists. All these events occurred in less than 2 hours, and most of us gathered here today were eyewitnesses to this televised vision of hell on earth. 22 years have passed, but the pain of 9/11 endures. Today, we as a community seek to remember and to absorb some of this enduring pain by honoring those with ties to Newton who were murdered by terrorists on September 11, 2001. Here today, the names of 8 people, 3 women, 5 men, ranging in age from 24 to 60, are engraved and memorialized on a granite scroll mounted near the center of the 9/11 memorial sculpture. Granite steps leading to the memorial are inscribed with a timeline of the September 11 events. Bricks between the timeline steps are engraved with personal messages from donors. As we look at the amazing memorial in front of the fire department headquarters, we thank Mark Sangiolo for his artistic genius and creation of this sculptured monument, a monument that turns a date into 2 words with complex meaning. The classicism of his Roman numerals conjures deep thoughts of a civilized humanity that has endured through the centuries and of its enduring hope for the future of civilized mankind. The Roman numerals IX and XI say it all. IX, XI makes us say in words 9/11. And in years to come, people will look at the monument and say, it says 9/11. The Latin term res ipsa loquitur comes to mind as the Roman numerals IX, XI speak for themselves. These gracious and timeless Roman numerals and the visual effect of the palindrome IX, XI place 9/11 in history with grace, dignity, and solemnity. I encourage all of you to come and visit the monument throughout the year. The early morning is an excellent time to sit there in silence. In silence, as the city awakes, you can hear, and your mind can absorb and ponder the events of 9/11. And as you reflect upon the events of 9/11, their enormity is like drinking from a fire hose. Here you will remember that all of the acts of 9/11 were no accident. The acts of 9/11 were calculated acts of hatred. And those calculated acts were fulfilled on that day. More than 3,000 people were murdered, leaving scars and hardships on families and friends then and for years to come. So here we are today at this memorial. Today, now, the enormity of 9/11 consumes our thoughts. As humans, we know that time heals all wounds. Over time, the pain of 9/11 is less acute because time is a salve. Time is filled with many thoughts and actions that refocus life and seek solace, understanding, peace, appropriate response, and indeed, for some, retribution. Today, we are on guard. Our lives have changed. Let us remember 9/11. Let us be vigilant of evil. Let us be close to each other, and let our actions be focused and careful so that, indeed, time heals all wounds. Thank you. I would like to now welcome Mayor Ruth Ann Fuller.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Bill. And thank you to the Newton Police, the Newton Fire, and the Middlesex County Sheriff's Department Honor Guards. To Ginny Gardner for your invocation. I know this is a hard night for you. To Liz Feinstein, wherever you are, what a beautiful voice. Thank you so much. To Lucas, thank you for your bravery coming up in front of so many. And ahead of time, I want to say thank you to Alan Monarino, our bugler, and to Reverend Caggiano, our chaplain tonight. We stand together this evening with the memories of those lost etched in our hearts, with everlasting gratitude for the bravery and the sacrifices of first responders, with inspiration from the response of strangers who help strangers, and with the knowledge that we are strongest when we stand united to defend, protect, and preserve democracy. 22 years. It's difficult to believe as we gather this evening that it has been over 2 decades since terrorists took control of 4 airplanes and murdered 3,000 plus people. Women, men, and children who came from all backgrounds, from all faiths, and from all parts of our country and the world. I'm of an age where I can still feel the stunned shock when I think of that morning of September 11th, 2001. Eyes glued to the television as the horror unfolded. Profound grief rolled over our community here in Newton and over our nation as the staggering reality of the loss became known, and for some became very, very personal. Tonight, we hold close the families shattered that day, including those here in Newton. The Bavises, the Hackles, the Humbers, the Jacobs, the Levins, the Meltzers, the Rosses, the Toyans, and the Sallys, and so many others who felt the loss directly. Some of us were able to join Halima Saleh this morning at 8:46 as she was thinking of her daughter, her son-in-law, and her unborn, what would have been grandchild. And there are others here in this audience that I know between 8:46 and about 11 a.m. this morning were reliving that nightmare. I also remember on 9/11, 22 years ago, I remember that we very vividly, that we stood as one in gratitude and in awe as we watched evil be met by the extraordinary courage of first responders running towards the flames, the falling buildings, the chaos. We remain humbled by their selfless valor. Tonight, it is not just fitting and proper, but it is important and necessary to lift up and recognize our Newton firefighters, our Newton police officers, and the EMTs in their stations, on their patrols, in their ambulances, and yes, while they are off duty, who we have seen over and over, certainly over the years, but including in these past difficult months, put their own safety aside as they responded to dangerous calls and horrific tragedies. We thank you for your service to the people who live and work in Newton. We are joined this evening by Fire Chief Greg Gentile, Lieutenant Hendrickson from the Newton Police Department, representing NPD, our Superintendent Anna Noland. Can you give a wave? Thank you for being here, Anna. We're grateful. Our Veteran Services Director, Seth Bai, City Council President, Susan Albright, City Council Vice President, Rick Lipoff, and thankfully a slew of city councilors. City councilors Lucas, Malachi, Markowitz, Ryan, Norton, Wright, and Danberg, as well as our school committee chair, Tamika Olszewski, and member Paul Levy. Some of us have had the privilege of coming to know Sandy Young, who's dealing with her own family tragedy tonight, She, along with the members of the 9/11 Memorial Committee, year after year after year, make sure we never forget, in part by the important permanent memorial that they had erected. We think of Sandy tonight in particular, and we give thanks to the whole committee. As the years pass, more and more of us will know the history of September 11th only through permanent memorials such as ours out here in front of fire headquarters, or through memories shared, news accounts, books, what we see on TV, and ceremonies like this. For those here today too young to have a lived experience of the morning 22 years ago that started with clear blue skies and ended under a dark cloud of dust and rubble, in addition to holding those families in your hearts, please also know that the actions of the terrorists revealed the soul of our nation, the belief in America's noble goals, the deep commitment we have to democracy, the unflinching charity we felt for one another in the aftermath of the attack, our heartfelt thanks to the defenders of democracy and the first responders, and especially our eternal gratitude to those who have given their last full measure of devotion. And let me close by saying, let tonight's gathering fuel our resolve to support the rights and freedoms that those enemies on 9/11 sought to destroy, and let us never forget. Thank you.
We will now hear from the Director of Veterans Services, Seth Bai.
While I wouldn't say it's easy to follow up after my commanding officer, the Honorable Ruth Ann Fuller, it's a pleasure to follow up after to let her know that we appreciate your words, and it gives me a little tone and tenor when I come up here to speak to the Newtonians here. Thank you. The September 11th attacks called on Americans to embrace the nation's character as a people drawn from every corner of the world, from every religion, and from every background. In all, about 3,000 people lost their lives that day as a result of the planes that crashed into New York City's World Trade Center and in the Pennsylvania field. American Airlines Flight 77 slammed into the Defense Department's headquarters, killing 184 people. The youngest victim was only 3 years old. Extremist organizations such as ISIS and Al-Qaeda know they can never drive down the U.S., so they focus on trying to instill fear in the hopes of getting Americans to change how they live. President Barack Obama spoke, noting that the threat that became so evident on September 11th has evolved greatly over the past 20 years. Terrorists, he said, often attempt strikes on a smaller but still deadly scale, citing attacks in Boston, San Bernardino, and Orlando. He said that extremist groups will never be able to defeat the United States because we know our diversity and our patchwork heritage is not a weakness. It is, and it will always be, one of our greatest strengths. This is the America that was attacked on that September morning, and this is the America that we must remain true to. This enduring Newton 9/11 memorial pays tribute to those who lost their lives that day, ensuring that we stay true to ourselves, that we stay true to what's best in us, that we do not let others divide us. How we conduct ourselves as individuals, as a city, and as a nation We have the opportunity each and every day to live up to the sacrifice of those heroes that we lost. From the firefighters who responded to the attacks, to the family members of those who died, to the Navy SEALs who made sure justice was finally done in the elimination of al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden. Our nation's security has never been strengthened more since 9/11 than after those attacks were prevented. We must resolve to continue doing everything in our power to protect this country that we love. In our grief and in our grace, dear God, you have reminded us that together there is nothing we Americans cannot overcome. Thank you very much. God bless America.
Anthony Amore was with the U.S. Department of Security's Transportation Security Administration, where he worked to rebuild security at Logan Airport after 9/11. Welcome, Anthony.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. And Mayor Fuller, the committee that asked me to speak tonight, I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to talk to the people of Newton. And before I begin, I'd like to thank our first responders who are here for your willingness to do what we all know could be something very, very difficult, and that's what we honor tonight. So I thank you for your work. Prior to my work with the Transportation Security Administration at Logan Airport, I was a special agent with an agency that no longer exists, the FAA Security Division at Logan Airport. After the events of 9/11, I was asked to help rebuild security at Logan, and it was the greatest honor of my career, of my lifetime, to get to do so. And in this era of acrimony in Washington, it is difficult to imagine that in 2001, Congress passed and the President signed a sweeping piece of legislation just 2 months after the attacks in our country. The Aviation and Transportation Security Act of 2001 completely transformed how our airports would be secured. We deployed 1,200 new federal screeners at Logan Airport, built 9 baggage screening buildings, and deployed millions of dollars in new security technologies. And it marked the formation of the largest federal agency since the Air Force 54 years prior. TSA formed so quickly, people think of it as our nation's first response to the terrorist attacks on the United States, but it wasn't. The first response took place before the tragic events had even concluded. The passengers aboard United Flight 93, aware that the hijackers were not going to land the aircraft safely and hold them hostage, as in most previous hijackings, made a pact and a plan with each other to act. Their courage in storming the cockpit and fighting the terrorists is now the stuff of legend. They fought for their lives, yes, but they knew from phone calls to loved ones that there was an attack on America. So they told their families and friends they loved them, they prayed, and they fought for their country too. The 9/11 Commission believes that the likely target of Flight 93 was the Capitol building. There's no doubt that together, Todd Beamer, Mark Bingham, Tom Burnett, and Jeremy Glick and their fellow passengers spared the nation from having yet another horrific image etched into our collective memory forever. It mattered to no one that Beamer was a devout Christian or that Bingham was a gay man. Why would they ask? What mattered was what united them, their shared humanity and devotion to their fellow man. When they were planning on that aircraft, no one asked, wait, who did you vote for? Are you a liberal or conservative? They formulated a plan, placed their trust in each other, and said, let's roll. Meanwhile, in New York, the city's firefighters, EMS, and police were putting their lives on the line to save people trapped in the two buildings of the World Trade Center. 2 decades later, we've all heard recordings of scared office workers trapped in the Twin Towers speaking with 911 operators. No one discussed their differences that day. They prayed together, reassured each other, and promised to deliver messages to loved ones. We've heard about the first responders who fearlessly climbed up the stairs into the fire so that others could walk down them to safety. When their commanding officers told them to go inside and rescue people, not one of them declined. Like the heroes of Flight 93, they cared not about the race, ethnicity, religion, or politics of the people in the buildings, only that they were their fellow men and women and they needed to be saved. The same is true of the heroes at the Pentagon. Like you, when I consider September 11, I feel grief for the victims and their families. I feel awe for the heroism so many exhibited on that day and afterwards. And I remember that at one time, not so long ago, 300 million Americans were united as one people. Today, that unity sometimes seems like a distant memory. It is my prayer that we never forget. That we never forget the attacks in our country 22 years ago. That we never forget the lives we lost and the families left behind. And that we never forget our capacity to unite as a nation and as a people. Let that be the legacy of this day and this memorial. I thank you.
As Mayor Fuller mentioned, Sandy Young is absorbed in her own personal family tragedies of her mother's death and funeral, and she is not here this evening. In her place, we will have the announcement of this year's scholarship recipients by Tom Mountain.
This year and every year thereafter, we will be announcing scholarships for, at a minimum, 2 very lucky recipients from the Newton community, high school students who have written essays pertaining to 9/11 and what it means to them and to our country. And this year, 2 Newton residents, high school students, are the recipients of that, and they are Nyla Sharif, a 12th grader at Dana Hall. And also Allison Wu, a 12th grader at Newton South High. And we will be looking forward to many such recipients in the years to come. And I congratulate you ladies for your superb work in writing those essays. They were very meaningful. They meant a lot to us and to the community. And you were chosen out of many such participants this year for our first annual Newton 9/11 Memorial Scholarship Essay Contest. So thank you so much.
Family members of Newton victims and committee members will read the memorial texts.
Mayor Seti Warren, former mayor of Newton, I am proud that citizens came together to build this memorial. Let us use it to remember those Newton on that devastating September day. Let us also use this memorial to remind ourselves that we must do all we can every day to preserve America's greatness, its traditions of liberty, justice, and the opportunities in a peaceful world.
May we never forget, on September 11, 2001, terrorist attacks killed nearly 3,000 innocent men, women, and children in New York City, the Pentagon, and Shanksville, Pennsylvania. The people of Newton, Massachusetts, built this memorial in 2012 to honor both the neighbors we lost and those who served that day and thereafter.
At approximately 7 a.m., 3 terrorists leave the Park Inn in Newton to board American Airlines Flight 11 in Boston. At 8:46 a.m., Flight 11 crashes into the World Trade Center North Tower.
At 9:03 a.m., United Airlines Flight 175 crashes into the World Trade Center, South Tower. At 9:37 a.m., American Airlines Flight 77 crashes into the Pentagon. At 9:58, the South Tower collapses.
At 9:03, United Airlines Flight 175 crashes into the World Trade Center South Tower. At 9:37, American Airlines Flight 77 crashes into the Pentagon. At 9:58, the South Tower collapses.
The heroic rescue efforts on September 11th came at great cost. More than 400 rescuers died. 343 were New York City firefighters, and 3 were emergency medical technicians.
"37 Port Authority police officers were killed, as were 23 officers from the New York City Police Department.
On November 10th, 2001, President George W. Bush said the following in a speech before the United Nations General Assembly: "Time is passing, yet for the United States of America, there will be no forgetting September 11th. We will remember every rescuer who died in honor. We will remember every family that lives in grief. We will remember the fire and ash, the last phone calls, the funerals of the children."
Today, we remember in particular our Newton neighbors who perished on the flights and in the towers. These men and women live on in our hearts and our minds.
Mark Bavis, age 31. Having played 4 years on Boston University's ice hockey team, Mark was entering his second season as an amateur scout for the Los Angeles Kings when he died on United Airlines Flight 175.
Hi, I'm Peter Hackle. Paige Farley Hackle was my dad's wife. And someone once asked me if I, at birth, was told that I could only live to be 40, what would I do different? So I'm sure there's a lot of things that we would do, you know, each of us, if we had that amount of time here. Paige was killed when she was 46, and she was really just beginning life. But today I was going to send my dad a note and talk about the things that we really only own. What are those? The first thing that came to my mind was memories, fond or otherwise, and we own those memories for the duration of our lives, and those are the things that really matter while we're here and able to create those memories. Paige created enough memories for an entire lifetime. She was an inspiration to everyone around her. You felt loved when you were in her presence, and she did a lot of great things. She was a giver. She was going to California to start a radio program that was going to definitely be syndicated, and it was going to be helpful to many people. She was active as a philanthropic person, and she got great joy from giving. So we miss her very much, and she's given me the opportunity to try to, keep her spirit alive by working on behalf of some of the organizations she was responsible for getting me involved with. I'm very grateful to her. Thank you.
Nicholas Humber, age 60, with a degree in mechanical engineering from Rensselaer and a master's from Wharton. Nicholas joined the newly created EPA in 1971 and co-founded the National Waste-to-Energy Recycling Programs. His work focused on wind-generated energy, fuel cell technology, and sustainability. He died on Flight 11.
Aaron Jacobs, age 27. Aaron worked at Cantor Fitzgerald in the North Tower of the World Trade Center. He loved New York as he jogged through Central Park, tasted its ethnic restaurants, and taught skills to the needy. Aaron traveled widely, and he and his fiancée thought they might honeymoon on an African safari.
My brother, Stuart Todd Meltzer, age 32 when he passed. He had a six-month-old and a 3-year-old when he left us. And he was a great family man, an avid fan of all Boston sports. He would have loved to have seen what we all got to see, believe me. I had the fortune of attending the Patriots game yesterday with Stuart's children, and Jake and Dylan, and Jake looks just like him. So fitting tribute to spend that day with my older brother Larry and Stuart's 2 children, and they would definitely thank you all for being here today. Thank you.
Hello. You're stuck with me for a few minutes because every time that I've been here, I've told you a little bit about Richard's family and what's going on with them. So just bear with me. And today's been a very, very difficult day, not only because of my sister, his sister, just passing away, but I usually go to the State House, and I'm always a part of that community where we talk about the whole, what's going on, or what went on. Anyway, Richard was the kind of man that he would walk into a room and fill the room. Had a fantastic personality. People loved him. They gravitated towards him, and he was just a very, very special guy. He was very successful. He created an awful lot of opportunity for many, many people. When his daughter had been diagnosed with a brain tumor, he gave up his job at our company for 3 months and traveled all over the country to meet and learn about brain tumor. And he came back, and when Mass General said it was inoperable, he said, no, it's not inoperable. And she went through the surgery, came out great, and is now living in Paris, married to a great guy, has 3 fabulously beautiful children who play the piano, who are loving and kind, and everything that their mother is or everything that their grandfather is, and they know Richard as Papa Dickie. Richard's oldest daughter, Abigail, who is, needless to say, fabulous, has 3 beautiful daughters, and her oldest one just went off for the first time to Vasa, and that's pretty terrific. We love her dearly, Abigail. And then there's Esme, who's the youngest, who sort of runs the world, and Hannah, who is a beautiful dancer, and she's just lovely in every way. I miss my brother. My sister-in-law is terrific. She's a very well-known, very well-regarded artist, Judy Rotenberg. She has a gallery in Rockport, was on Newbury Street for well over 40 years, has a studio in Rockport, and still paints, and her work is very, very special, very beautiful. I just want to say something else. You should hold on to all those that you love and care about. Tell them every day that you love them, you're thinking about them, and give them hugs and kisses whenever you can. And when you're not available to be with them, tell them over the telephone. It takes 2 seconds. I love you, I care about you. Have a great day. Wishing you all the best. Thank you, and it's a dream and a pleasure to be here. And I'm on this cane because my honey decided that he wanted to be closer to me in our bed, so he moved the wrong way and I landed on the floor. So I make sure he's guilty all the time. So hug him and kiss him.
My name is Halima Sali. My daughter, Rahma Sali, age 28. Her husband, Michael Theodorides, and she was 7 months pregnant, of Sri Lankan descent. She grew up in Japan and moved with her family to Newton after graduating from Wellesley College. She worked for a technology company in Cambridge. Rahma and her husband and the unborn child was on Flight 11 on their way to a wedding in California. She was 7 months pregnant with her first child. We miss her very dearly. Thank you.
Amy E. Toyin, age 24. Amy was in the World Trade Center on 9/11 for a trade show when her fiancé Jeff received a call from her cell phone at 8:58 a.m. He saw Amy's caller ID, but then the call ended. Amy's father said, "We had just ordered her wedding dress. Amy was so happy in her life, a woman in love who loved her job."
At this time, the fire department chaplain, Reverend Mark Caggiano, will give us benediction.
As we end our time together, I would like for us to enter into a time of remembrance, a time to remember those that were lost, the loved ones and the family members, the friends and the colleagues, the firefighters, the police officers, the paramedics and the EMTs, those who served our nation to the last moment of their lives. This is a prayer that is used at memorial services. It comes from the Jewish tradition, and it is to remember those who we have lost but who remain in our hearts, and it may be familiar to some of you. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we remember them. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember them. In the opening of the buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember them. In the blueness of the sky and in the warmth of summer, we remember them. In the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember them. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember them. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember them. When we have joys we yearn to share, we remember them. So long as we live, they too shall live, for they are now a part of us as we remember them. Amen.
And now Alan Manamarino, American Legion Post 440, will provide. Yeah, go ahead.
One last thing, we forgot one scholarship winner. James DeAndrea, would you like to come up? And we applaud you. Sorry for the oversight. It's been a crazy day. Thank you. I hope you understand.
Without further ado, Alan Manamarino and his trumpet. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening, and never forget. Thank you.